Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the additional council meeting of 17 March 2025. This meeting has been called to discuss specific business. Before we commence the meeting, I request that all mobile telephones are turned off or switched to silent. Thank you. We will now commence by reading the Acknowledgement of Country, and I call upon my colleague, Councillor Mal Osborne-Smith, to read the Acknowledgement of Country.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people as the traditional owners and original custodians of this land, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and the elders from other communities who may be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Councillor Victor Franco. I am the Deputy Mayor of Boroondara Council. As the Mayor is not in attendance this evening, it's my responsibility to chair the council meeting. I'll start by introducing my fellow councillors. Seated to my left at the horseshoe table in the council chamber are Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth, Councillor Shima Ibuki, Councillor Wes Galt, Councillor Michael Nolan, Councillor Felicity Sinfield, and on the opposite side of the horseshoe we have Councillor Mal Osborne-Smith, Councillor Rob Baillieu, Councillor John Friend Pereira, and Councillor Chris Pattis. I also acknowledge in attendance this evening our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Philip Storer, and our Coordinator of Governance to my left, Ms. Kirsten Ritchie. There are other officers in attendance tonight, and they will be introduced as required. Please note that the council meeting is being live streamed on the council YouTube page, so you can watch proceedings of the meeting, council deliberations and voting there. The meeting will also be recorded and made available at a later date on council website as soon as practical. Moving to apologies, Ms. Ritchie, are there any apologies for this evening?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, there is one apology for tonight's meeting, Councillor Tawney.
Thank you. Moving to the second item, declaration of conflicts of interest of any councillor or council officer. Are there any conflicts of interest that any councillor or council officer would like to foreshadow for the matters on the agenda this evening? Okay. As there are no apologies, no conflicts, we'll move straight to the presentation of officers' reports. Item 3.1 is contract 2024/33 Parks and Streetscapes Mowing Services. And this item will be introduced by David Shepherd, the Manager of Environmental Sustainability and Open Spaces.
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider the award of contract number 2024/33, Parks and Streetscape Mowing Services. Park maintenance is a high profile and valued service for Council, with our parks consistently receiving high scores in customer satisfaction surveys. Quality mowing and site cleaning is an important aspect of our park presentation and is delivered through this contract. We received 5 submissions to our request for tender and are recommending the appointment of Citywide Service Solutions for an initial period of 3 years. Consideration was given to an alternate mowing schedule. However, after an impact review, that has not been recommended by officers. The full officer recommendation is on the screen and I commend that to you.
Councillors, are there any questions of council officers? Councillor Galt.
Thank you, Chair. I just noticed in the detailed requirements of this contractor that the contractor is required to inspect and report on the maintenance required. Then they do the maintenance. I'm just a little bit concerned that do we have a checking mechanism to make sure that's a fair and reasonable thing?
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, all of the works required are photographed before and after completion of work, so there is a system in place for us to see those. That they come to us through their daily digital diary, so we see them firsthand as works are approached and addressed. And just to go into a little bit more detail on that, with the specification does detail exactly how long the grass should be cut at, the frequency that sites are required to be visited, the standard of cleanliness of pathways, et cetera, after the works are to be completed as well. And we undertake 25 audits per month to ensure that services have been delivered to those standards.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Baillieu.
Thank you. I just had one question around the climate action aspect of this contract. In particular, things like electric leaf blowers, whether or not the mowing equipment can be electrified, whether or not that's a factor in this contract at all.
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, part of the request for tender required submitters to comment on their environmental sustainability commitments. Citywide were the highest scoring tenderer in that aspect as well, so they have committed to a number of electric mowers within their service. Not all of their mowers are electric at this point in time, but a number are, and they intend to continue that transition to a full electric service. About 50% of their small equipment is currently electric, and again, they are looking to progress to fully electric as those pieces of equipment become more comparable to their petrol counterparts.
And is there any scope for us to ask more of them in this space, or?
It's more of a collaborative approach, I would say. So we've certainly flagged through the tender interview that council are really committed in this space and want to see as much action as possible, and we'll continue to work with them. It's also important that we enable them to deliver the services to the standard that we want, so we don't want to compromise on that aspect either.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just one question from me. I'm curious to understand if there's any requirements in this tender process or any requirements on a more general basis for our chosen contractor to point out areas that may be able to be improved for efficiency. You know, by that I mean bollards or areas that are difficult to mow or the like, that may end up improving the job for them next time around, pointing out those day-to-day things that might be impossible for you or your team to have an intimate knowledge of. I'm wondering if there's that ability in this current arrangement or could be.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor, that is an absolute expectation of our contractors to report anything that does make their life more difficult or you know, give them opportunities to do their job more effectively. Bollards are one of those challenges out there in that we do not allow the contractor to use glyphosate around bollards, so they are required to brush cut around them, so they do take some time to attend to. Where they identify sites that they feel bollards are not required, they will flag that with us and we can address that.
So is there an active obligation for them to do that, or?
It is part of their monthly reporting requirement to mention any issues like that. Following the monthly report, we have a monthly meeting with them as well, where we go through that reporting information from them, the auditing the process that we've undertaken, and then confirm the required payment for that month.
Thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question with regard to the tender evaluation, not a confidential question, but just a question with regard to what's included in the scope of works. And as this contract would have people that are working on Parks, Gardens Council facilities, is it possible to include that they be advised of SNAP Send Solve and that they can report any graffiti damage in addition to the works they're doing, so that that can go directly to council to implement rectification and removal of any graffiti.
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor. The specific list of required services in this contract are the maintenance of grass areas, so specifically mowing and brush cutting, the cleaning of paths and hard surfaces, site inspections and reporting of open space asset damage and maintenance need, which picks up on your point around SnapSend Solved, which is one of the ways they do report through to us. Litter collection and disposal, any herbicide application that we approve, and then the administration and reporting requirements of the contract.
That'd be wonderful, thank you, because I know it's probably the areas that are most targeted with graffiti, and it's good to have them aware of the reporting. Thank you.
Councillor Pattis.
Thank you, through you, Chair. And I want to ask this question, but without obviously hinting at any confidential items. What's particularly pleasing is to see that the recommended vendor here has scored quite high on the local economic development criteria. I just was wondering whether we could just maybe highlight that, seeing this as a public, that, you know, what in particular were the good aspects of this particular vendor? I think it had to do with using local staff and also Indigenous staff as well. Could we just maybe summarise why this was a particularly, what was particularly pleasing about this vendor in terms of local economic development without compromising anything confidential?
Yes, thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor. As you indicated, Citywide do have a number of staff who live in Burundara. I think that number's at 10 currently. They're registered with Supply Nation to support Indigenous employment, and they have a number of business agreements in place with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander businesses. They also work with a number of organisations to help support work for disadvantaged job seekers, and they use suppliers through the Social Enterprise Panel.
Councillor Sinfield.
I don't have any questions. I was happy to move the officer's recommendation when the time's right.
Councillor Ibuki.
Thank you. I just have a question as a new councillor, and I just wondered whether at the time where we go out to contract for this, whether council does a cost analysis around whether it would be better for us to have permanent staff who perform this service, or whether we continue to use contract staff.
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, with all of our contracts, we'll undertake an analysis of the performance of the current service before we go back out to market. In this case, we asked for the prices to be separated into our high-profile parks and our standard parks, so that we could actually compare that with delivering either of those components of the contract with an in-house team instead, and we priced that as well, and found that we were getting really good value for money through this contract.
As there are no more questions, councillors, I'm in search of a motion. I know Councillor Sinfield, would you be moving a motion?
I am, unless anyone else gets in with their buzzer first. I'd be delighted
You're first,
to move
Councillor
the officer's
Sinfield.
recommendation. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Osborne-Smith.
Yes, I'd be delighted to second that motion.
Okay. To assist the mover, is there anyone opposed? Okay. Councillor Sinfield, would you like to speak to the motion as the mover?
I don't think anything really needs to be said. I think the motion speaks for itself. I thank the officers for their due diligence in putting this together, and I look forward to our Parks and Gardens continuing the standard that our community expects of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne-Smith, would you like to speak to the motion?
Not required, thank you.
Thank you. I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried unanimously. Okay, moving to the next item, 3.2, contract variation, contract number 2021/72, Tree Root Services. This item will also be introduced by David Shepherd, the Manager of Environmental Sustainability and Open Spaces.
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor. This report seeks approval for a variation to the Tree Root Services contract number 2021/72 to support an increase to the council-approved expenditure limit. This contract provides services that allow for non-destructive excavation around tree roots as part of investigating property damage claims and water leaks, installation of root barriers to prevent further damage from tree roots, and reinstatement of footpaths. Over the course of the contract, we have had budgets of approximately $2 million per annum, split evenly between root works and concrete works. Unfortunately, when the contract was awarded, only the budget for root works was considered in calculating the contract expenditure limit. Consequently, we are now approaching that limit and we need to increase it if we wish to keep using this contract. The two contractors identified to continue works under this contract have been completing high quality works at a reasonable price over the course of the contract period. It should be noted that as this is a work, which enables us to manage this contract within the available budget allocations. The officer recommendation is on the screen and I commend that to you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. Colleagues, are there any questions of officers? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Chair. I have some questions, but I'd like to request if we could go into confidential. It's to do with the terms of the tender. Thank you.
Before we put that, I'd like to ask whether any other councillors have any questions that might be dealt with in the open session. Okay, well, would you like to move a motion to go into confidential session?
I do, thank you.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Gold.
Happy to second.
Thank you. I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Declare that carried unanimously. We'll now go into confidential business. I'll have to ask any members of the public to leave, and those online. We will be going into confidential session to address matters of a confidential nature relating to the tender. Thank you. Welcome back to anyone who's watching. We're now back in public session, and I presume there are no more questions from colleagues, so I'm in search of a motion. Councillor Friend Pereira.
I'd like to move the motion as the officer's recommendations shown on the screen.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Galt. I don't know, it's a race there.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor John Friend Pereira, would you like to speak to the motion?
No.
And yourself, Councillor Galt? No. I'll put to assist the mover, is there anyone opposed? No. I'll put the vote to the motion. Votes in favour. Thank you. I declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you. And that brings us to the close of the meeting and to the end of the order of business. Thank you to all who have joined us in the gallery and online this evening, and I now declare this council meeting closed. Thank you.